Good morning, everybody. It's Ashton Hines, one half of the real estate heavyweights. I'm here with my good friend Tavis Westbrook. What's going on, Tavis?
What's up? What's up, brother?
Not a lot. Well, I would say that's not true. It's a lot. We got a lot going on. For those of you who don't know, this is our we come to you twice a week. We've got this podcast we try to do on Fridays, which is a little bit more of an overview of the real estate industry. We've got another one that's a deep dive into flipping. And you might be thinking to yourself, like, why should I even care? Well, a little bit about me. If you don't know, I work full-time as a home health physical therapist assistant. I help people after they get home from surgery and that sort of thing, help with their balance and all that. All day, every day, I'm driving around doing that. But I also have my real estate license. I help people buy and sell. I've got a listing coming up, super excited about. And I also wanted to get into real estate investing. So a couple years ago, I took the leap, and I'm on my flip number 4. I made a lot of mistakes early on, and fortunately, I connected with a guy that I had known about for a long, long time, Tavis Westbrook, and he slowly started, I think maybe just out of pure empathy, just started helping me out because he just saw this. He was tired of seeing blood in the streets, and he said, "Look, hold on, let me send a guy, and then let me send another guy. Let me come walk this for you." So, Tavis has flipped over 200 houses. He's been doing this for a long time, like 12, 13 years. He's got commercial, he's got midterm rentals, and he's really good at flipping and wholesaling. So that's our thing. You know, I'm getting going, and he's been doing it a long time. So we bounce ideas off of each other and try to help each other out. So speaking of, right before this, we actually had to postpone our recording a little bit today because Tavis he's working a deal live. He's waiting for information to come by. He's got a deal working. So give us a little update on that, Tavis.
Yeah, so, you know, it's funny how this business works, and I was just telling somebody this a couple days ago. You know, this business is hard to scale, but it's also it's hard to determine what's going to happen one thing from the next. So you just have to be consistent in looking for deals every day and making phone calls, making connections, having conversations, and looking for opportunities day in and day out. So last week I was kind of complaining that, you know, I needed to do something different with strategy, and I still, obviously there's some things that I should definitely pivot and change in my business model. But last week the issue was, you know, I was getting frustrated because I was getting bid out, and I wasn't missing them by much, but I missed a couple deals, and it was just a lot of competition. And this week, you know, I got some leads by some old sphere, man. A lady that hit me up on Facebook Messenger, actually, and
cool.
It actually might have been generated from our podcast, to be honest with you. So, and nevertheless,
what? It's already paying off.
I think so.
That's
So
awesome.
no. So the funny thing is that the last time we communicated through Facebook Messenger was 2012 with this agent that reached out to me. And it was on a deal, and it was actually, she was representing a buyer, and I was flipping it, and she was kind of late to the table. I already had an offer on it. And so anyways, that was our last conversation. It showed up on Facebook Messenger, and it was the last feed, right, in that Messenger thread. And I was like, holy crap. So anyways, we connected, and it was a deal in Wiley, and we were able to come up with a scenario. It's one of those convenience deals, right? You know, the gentleman that owns it hasn't lived in the house in about 6 months. Daughter lived there, destroyed the house, basically, you know, dog pissed everywhere, and so all the carpet was ripped out. And he's moving on to bigger and better things. He's owned the house for many, many years. So it had a lot of equity in it, great neighborhood, great property, big house. I really wanted to take it down and flip it. That was my goal, just because I was like, man, I can probably get in this thing and knock it out pretty quick, even though it's a big project. But I can do this in probably 45 days. It's a pretty clean deal. Built in 2003 house, but it was like 3,700 square feet or something, right? So anyways, long story short, we went back and forth a little bit. We were able to ink a deal. It's going to be a wholesale model in order to make it work that, you know, made sense for everybody to kind of go that direction, to get the seller more net. So I got squeezed on the net side, and I was like, well, doesn't make a lot of sense for me to flip it now, so let's go this direction. So far so good. We got a little option on it, so we'll see how everything plays out. On the other hand,
awesome.
I got a lead yesterday on one in DeSoto, and just going back and forth trying to make that deal work. So we're close. We'll see what happens. But anyways, that's
stuff happening.
That's what's going on this side. So
cool. Yeah, for me, I mean, we're heading out of town, going to Indianapolis today for a marching band competition, the national competition for the high school marching band. So we're headed out, but I've got a listing that's going live tonight on the retail side. Josh, our producer, our technological wizard, he's wanting to move, and so we're helping him out. We're going to list his house. So we're getting all that going and getting a sign in the yard this morning, lockbox on the door. I ran by the flip over in Mapleton. We're scrambling. We're trying to get that listed by next week. It's raining today, and I saw a slight little stain on the ceiling the other day. I was like, okay, let's just make sure something's not leaking. And so the roofer's going over there, floor guy's there, hardware's supposed to happen tomorrow, plumbing, everyone's supposed to land on that house tomorrow. So just trying to get everything lined up before I leave town. So it is a mad scramble. So,
I was going to say, it's funny going through this with you because I kind of take it for granted, right? Like, I mean, doing these and it's always the 12th hour push and headaches, and you have to be very, very strategic on the monopoly plays, right? And we've talked about this a little bit. It's like, wait, don't call him yet because you need to call this guy first. And this guy's set for Friday, and so you're trying to plan things 3, 4, 5 days ahead to get the dominoes to line up exactly right. And you have to leave enough contingency in there to say, well, if this person doesn't finish on this day, then he at least has a little bit of breathing room, and then we stack this person, and then you're getting the stager involved, and so of course the stager, they want notice, and they've got to set their schedule. So it's a lot of little moving pieces to get it all the way to the finish line and get it right. But that's also why when you look in the market, I mean, how many flips have you shown buyers before that are not ready? Like you're like,
right,
this thing's not done. They're still working here. There's all these like loose ends, appliances may not be in, light fixtures, fan may not be in. Like, there's a lot of little loose ends, right, that don't make sense. So at least in your case, kind of learning this and going through it, things are stacking up to get it right.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's really coming together. We've had it for 14 months, not your ideal time frame. We had to pause for a while because of money.
There's no way. It hasn't been 14 months. I think you closed it
we're going
in
into
November
13
last year.
I'll double check. We might be going into 13 right now.
You're right at the 12th month mark.
By the time we're done, it'll be probably 14. But yeah. I mean, but now it's really looking awesome. I mean, the design, the layout, it's just like really, really looking great. So now's the fun time and getting to go over there and take videos and stuff like that. So, well, about this time, we try to just at least touch on the local market. We're in the DFW area, so we try to do a market update. And from a days on market and all that has not really changed a whole lot. What has changed a little bit and made news was our median house price had crept up above $400,000 for a while, and that made news. Well, now it's gone back down under that, and so it's waffling around the $400,000. And when in the article, Tavis, you highlighted this one quote from the expert that they were you're interviewing, and I think you know her possibly, but she basically said if it's a well done house that's clean and sell ready and looks like a model home, like it's ready to go, they're taking it seriously, it will move. If it's not that, and you're having to use your imagination and you're having to sort of make exceptions, and this house is not really market ready, it's probably going to sit. So that is a huge indicator of like, look, do your work, get the place clean, paint, stage if you can, do everything you can to take it seriously. Like, look, we're going to move this, because if you do that, houses are moving. It's still under 30 days on market on average. So, I mean, it's a good market to be in if you're wanting to sell. And Josh and Krista, they're selling, and they're actually going to rent for a while. So they're not even going to go on the other side trying to look for one. So this is a really good time for them because there's just not a lot of inventory. So I think we'll be in good shape.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So we'll pause this for a second. So that being said, let's get into a little bit of news. All right. On the news front, like we said, we live in the DFW area, but more specifically, North Dallas. More specifically, Tavis lives in Plano. I do a lot of work in Plano. I've spent tons and tons of time there, sold houses there, done a lot of therapy in Plano. And one of the huge landmarks that you will drive by, we actually mentioned it on the podcast just randomly a couple of times ago. I don't remember which episodes. You'll have to go back and listen to all of them. There's only 12, so just go ahead and get caught up. But we mentioned this building. It was the old EDS building, and it is in the heart of Plano at Legacy and Parkwood. It is huge, and it's going under a redevelopment. There's a new buyer in 2018, and they're finally redeveloping it, and it looks like it is huge. Tavis, why don't you give a few of the highlights from that article? Like, you remember like the investment number and how big that property is? I think is enormous.
Yeah, and not only is it a big project. I mean, they're saying first phase is going to be $1 billion to renovate this
Good
property. But what's cool?
I think
it's
total is $4 billion.
Yeah.
Yeah, $4 billion total. That's insane.
And it's a super cool building. If you've ever driven by, this is like any of you guys here in Dallas. This is Legacy and Parkwood area on the south side of that intersection. It used to be the EDS.
It looks like
building.
the UN is there. Like it looks like you're driving past some UN because there's flags all down this long corridor, a huge gate out front. I mean, it looks like an imposing building, you know.
And if
it's
I'm
really
not,
really interesting.
If I'm pretty sure this building was built in the 90s, maybe early 2000s. I mean, we moved to Plano in 2004, and this building had been there before that. So, but it was there before pretty much anything else around in that area. So, like even before like Shops of Legacy and stuff was being built out. So.
Yep. 99 acres, it says.
Super cool, really, really cool architecture. It looks like, I mean, from the renderings, it's going to be super cool. Like, they've got some crazy modern waterfalls and a lot of really cool hardscape. And it's going to be...
Yeah, they're making it like this
legit.
medical... Yeah, it's going to be like a medical center
life
or
science
something like
campus. Life science.
I don't even know what that means. A life science campus. It's $4 billion.
Doing a bunch of, they're going to make a bunch of clones, and I'm sure it's going to be like all the DNA stems and stem cell stuff. I don't.
This is why we do real estate and they do life science stuff. We think they're doing clone stems and stuff like that. But yeah, what's cool for us is that in that article it was saying they estimate that it's going to bring $240 million worth of salary to the area, 2,000 jobs in the initial phase. They're hoping to maybe bring in a research hospital eventually. Like, this seems like it's going to be
$240
really
million
cool hub.
$240 million dollars in salary on the low end. And that's per our council or city council member.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy.
And so from a real estate perspective, Tavis, you've got a midterm rental in Plano. That's where you live. Do you have another midterm in Plano, or is that it?
We got 2 in Plano and 1 in Richardson.
Okay. So, from an investor standpoint, you're there in Plano. Anything? What did you see? Something else?
Something about the former J.C. Penney campus among more than 70 million square feet of office space. So
that's
something about
on the other side.
Yeah, that's on the other side of the street, isn't it?
Tollway.
Yeah. Huh.
Hey, if they want to do, they were talking a little while ago. They had that whole tram. Did you ever read that article where they were trying to do that aerial tram around that whole part of town? They had approved zoning for and this above ground sort of gondola tram area over there in Plano, and maybe going through Legacy, or maybe it was up in the Frisco. There's that little triangle. You have Nebraska Furniture Mart, you got Legacy, and you got
yeah.
then you have the Star up there at the Cowboys. And so I thought, that'd be really neat if they could connect all that. But yeah,
they
J.C.
did that in
Penney's,
Las
they have a huge
Colinas.
campus there.
They did that in Las
Really?
Colinas in the 80s. Yeah, if you've ever kind of been in there or focused on the Las Colinas area. But it never really did much. The IBM campus was there and stuff like that. And it was super cool. Like, they had the tram running through the buildings and stuff like that. Like, it was pretty cool. And I think it's
And
still
developers
runs
that have
today,
that,
but
I'll have to check that out. Developers that have, I don't know, I have a huge respect for commercial developers. And it's not just a square building. There's like take Legacy or the Star or Grandscape up here. Anything like that is this master planned thing that takes a decade to fill out. The idea that they thought about that and they started developing and zoning and moving dirt and putting the whole infrastructure for all of that. And then, you can go and enjoy it and it makes sense. And I don't know, that is fascinating to me. And then on top of that, you add in an aesthetic that's really interesting. Like this new building looks really modern, really, really cool. I mean, I don't know that it's going to be open to the public. Maybe you could go, there's going to be a hotel there. So I guess you could go take part in it, maybe have dinner there or whatever and kind of get to experience the thing. But the whole new PGA up in Frisco, that whole development, I sat in on a deal with the mayor at one point, and just people who can have that vision and know sort of what they want it to be on a huge, huge scale. I get to do it a little house at a time, 2,600 square feet. It's hard enough for me to say, let's move this one wall and we're going to do the island here. And then, in a few months, or in my case, 14 months later, you look back and say, wow, that worked out. That's pretty cool. And so to do that on a huge, huge scale, man, that is a different level. And I think that is a huge skill. And, from an investment standpoint, I hope it works out for him. But I mean, talk about risk. Your funding you got to put together for something like that is just next level. I don't know that I will ever get to that point, but hey, kudos to those guys that can put it together, and fingers crossed, because for us, from a house value perspective, from an investment standpoint, anything in Plano like that, we'll be looking to flip some houses over there, because there's plenty of older houses that need attention and need some flipping. And if we can figure out how to cheaply take out cast iron, take out some cast iron pipes, and take out a few wet bars and all that, we'll be in the money right there. So we need to start going knocking on doors now before they start bringing in all those people to buy houses.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, good deal. Well, speaking of wet bars, we are going to get into our main event. And today's main event, our real estate deep dive on our Friday episode, we are going to talk a little bit about some of the design features that we as flippers kind of run across a good bit in this area specifically, but I'm sure this is applicable to other parts of the country. And just kind of talk about the ones that we definitely always take out, and some of them that we might not always take out, or we sort of repurpose or put another spin on it. So Tavis, why don't you get us started? Why don't you've been into a lot of houses with that eye of, yeah, we definitely got to get rid of this. So why don't we start with a couple of the design features? Plano was built mostly in the 70s and early 80s. And we have a lot of areas of town that are 60s and 70s where we flip. So what are some of the design features that you're always thinking, my gosh, what were they thinking back then? And you got to figure out a way to get around it.
Yeah, for sure. So, one of the things that you're going to notice in most of these 70s neighborhoods throughout Plano, Carrollton, et cetera, for some odd, crazy reason, I don't know why they did it. But they're always, not only do they not look the best, but they're also usually problematic. And that is starting with the curb appeal, looking at the front of the home, and you will see these wing walls. So these old brick wing walls.
Oh, okay. Yep. Polk had
that. Sometimes these footers on those things are like 18 inches deep, I don't know why they originally did it. If you drive around town, I mean, a lot of homes back then were built without fences as well. So maybe they just kind of did it with the concept of like kind of giving giving it more of a wider feel, I guess, maybe. I don't know, or defining the
that's
property line.
At Polk, we had one over on the right, but the air, I could see it if it was blocking the air conditioning unit or something.
Yeah.
But that one was in the backyard, way farther back. So yeah, I guess it never really dawned on me that, like, I know we had to paint it, but it never really dawned on me, like, why was this here in the first place?
Yeah.
But now that I think about it, I have no idea.
So, like,
that is really
slowly
weird.
start seeing them get removed, right? Like, I mean, that was one of the things we did in one of our first phase remodels at our primary residence. You definitely kind of, look at that. Now, it just depends, but most of the time, like, if they're destroyed, or they look like there's major foundations problems to the house, usually it's not. It's just the wing wall is in bad shape, and so demoing the wing wall is the best solution there. And then going inside the home, a lot of people push back just because you're going to run into these 8-foot ceilings most of the time, and then even worse case, you get into some of these Fox Jacobs homes or these scalloped Colford ceilings in the entry that actually make the entry ceiling lower. So sometimes taking that and raising it up to 8-foot flat makes a big difference. And changing lighting and all of that can actually make the feel of the entry of the home much better than what it felt like before, right? Even though you can't really necessarily change the ceiling height, you can do little things that make a big difference. Taking out headers, for instance, in a doorway. Yep. We did that at Mapleton. If you remember, you had that case opening with a doorway. So just taking that heading out, going up to 8-foot flat, and letting that continue from your main entryway into the family room made a world of difference, So little things like that. Just
for those people who don't, just a real quick for those of you who aren't familiar with construction, because honestly, I didn't quite. I'd heard of the header, but if you're looking at a door, if you're walking down a hallway and the ceiling is above you and it's high, and then you go to a door and the wall drops down a little bit and the casing around the door is there. What we did in Mapleton is we actually took the whole frame of the door out and moved that wall up so it's flush. So when you open up, you're looking down that hallway now, instead of seeing a dead end into the door, you actually can see all the way into the living room. It opens the whole area up. It's probably, I don't know, what is it, 2 feet or something like that, 18 inches between the top of the door frame and the actual ceiling.
About a foot,
you
about
think,
a foot and a half.
Yeah, you're like, well, what is that? But I mean, I'm telling you, that right there, when you open up that front door and then you can look down the hallway and that header is gone now, and it opens, it made, just aesthetically, it made such a difference. It was I wouldn't have thought of that. That was one of those things that you saw early on and said, hey, get rid of that. And I'm glad we did.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to reinforce the ceiling, because that support, for that open space is there. So you've got to move that support up into the attic space when you do something like that. But another big thing is like the doorways with the double doors or the twin doors leading from the kitchen to the family room, or the kitchen to the dining space a lot of times.
Oh, like the saloon doors?
Yeah, the saloon style doors, that you find in bathrooms, and then, just those slatted louvered double doors, so taking those off, doing a case opening, just little things like that can make a big difference. And you mentioned wet bars earlier. So obviously you've come across that a few times and, see these wet bars. And, I don't know what your thought is on them, but for me, the biggest issue with a wet bar, in my opinion, depending on where it is, sometimes they're in a really funky location and you're like, why is this here? It's really the truth to it is, they put sinks in there, and so then it takes up counter space, and it usually, a lot of times, they're only cold water. There's not even hot water to that side. Doesn't make a lot of sense if you're thinking you ran a bar sink here to wash dishes, so why is there only cold water? But, whatever was going on in the 70s, they were using tap water back then, I guess, so just using cold water there made more sense. But removing the sink, in my opinion, can make a big difference. And the cool thing is that, let's say that you it's a more expensive home, and you're like, hey, I want to make it a cool bar, and I want an ice maker here. Well, if it's got a sink, then it's got a drain. So then you can actually use a clear ice maker that has a pump and a drain to it and hook right up.
Okay.
So that's kind of nice sometimes. You can
use
idea. That space for something else. And then getting rid of the sink gives you more counter space. So, what is popular right now is having like a wine bar and a coffee bar. So, you can easily convert those spaces into something that's cool versus something that's doesn't make a lot of sense. So
yeah, for me, the ones that seem, well, I'll say this, and the ones I've seen, especially home health, when you get older, and a lot of those, some of them drink, but a lot of the older folks, they don't drink a whole lot, and they just become these collection areas for dust and tchotchkes and old shot glasses, and oh man, those areas are just, it's just kind of becomes a dump, and a lot of times they would wall that area with mirrors, or some of the shelving would be mirrored. Yep. Sometimes it's a little bit sunken down. It just becomes a little bit of an odd area. Now, some people use it, but like you said, and this is what you did at your house, and this is what we're doing at Mapleton, we created a much more functional and aesthetically pleasing bar area just off of the kitchen, where we extended the cabinets and the countertop. We have a few floating shelves. We're going to put a beverage center there. We're going to put an outlet in for the coffee maker. So you have this area that's dedicated to making drinks, or having a blender, or having the coffee maker. And it's not squared off. It's not taking up a bunch of square footage necessarily. And it would be pretty easy if at some point, for whatever reason, you wanted to use it for something else. You could put cookbooks there. You could use the shelves for not liquor storage, but whatever. You could put dishes and that sort of thing. So it's going to be really functional. But most people have some sort of beverage center that they want, and the dedicated beverage fridge or the ice maker these days is really, really popular. So I'm really glad that we went ahead and paid for that function over at Mapleton. But as far as the old school ones, you're going to not get a lot of square footage back, but to me it just almost looks dated. So if you either repurpose it and resurface things and actually make it functional with the coffee maker, or I would say just get rid of it. For me, some of the design things that are interesting, and I think you ran into this at your Echo property, is the just almost arbitrary architectural shelf above some entryway. I think going into that living room area where the fireplace was, you took that header out there. And you'll also see in the 90s, for some reason, the decorator, whoever was helping design those, they just thought that there was going to be these huge baskets of vines or something up on these shelves up high above in bathrooms or something. There's these like really weird collection areas above bathrooms or above windows. And you're like, what am I supposed to do with that? I mean, 10 years into owning that house is 4 inches of dust. That's all that's there. And I don't know what purpose it served in designing it. So things like that you can either take out, or you can wall up, or, try to address. I know you could, if it's lower, you can maybe make it some sort of custom bookshelf or something like that, which would be a little bit more functional. But a lot of the really odd nooks and crannies with sheetrock and shelving, I think screams 1990s. And I think if you can get rid of that. The other one is sunken living rooms. We see a lot of sunken living rooms. And so I think addressing that, I think you've said before, if you can do it with concrete, go for it. But if for some reason you're going to deck it, it can sound weird when you're walking and feel weird. So, have you ever filled in a sunken living room? Is that something that
I have? I have in several. Now, in some places, I've kept the sunken living room. Part of it kind of depends on how it defines the space. Like, if I feel like it's something that you're walking through and you got to step in and step out of, and it's not very, it's something you're going to trip over, or it's like, it's just not in the best location. If I feel like it's like off to the side, like my son's house, for instance, I left that sunken living room just from cost analysis, but it actually defined the space because the family room was separate from the dining, and even though there was no walls there, but the step down from the dining to the family room worked, right? And so the furniture layout and stuff, it kind of anchored where the couch was going and things like that. So it made sense. So I think it's case by case. Otherwise, I mean, you're looking at $2,500 to $3,000 on average to fill one in. So it could be a costly expense that may or may not truly change the outcome of the sale. So that's something you just got to look at.
And your windows then are at a weird height. You got to watch your window height off the floor. Sometimes you can fill in that. If they're already a little bit low.
Access, Yeah, if you've got
I mean, you probably you're discounting a. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think our delay is catching up to us. If you've got access off of that sliding or that sliding, if you got access off of the lower living room area to an outside, then it can definitely make things more difficult to fill that in to make that work. Another big thing is we've talked about this before, but fur downs. In some cases they were done because they ran the ducts through them. On other cases, they just, they kind of closed in the gap from the ceiling to the top of the cabinets. And, nowadays we're seeing people actually take cabinets all the way up to an 8-foot ceiling, or they might take it even all the way up to a 10-foot ceiling, right? Versus leaving open space above it. So those are just little things that we see architecturally that are in some of these old homes that are easy to kind of look through. Now, you have to be careful because it can open up a can of worms with fur downs, removing them, because a lot of times old electrical and stuff like that was ran through those fur downs. So you just have to be cautious. The other big thing is formal living and dinings. And even though it may not make, like at Mapleton, for instance, you had that big formal living, and then you also had the formal dining. And so, of course, we wanted to keep the formal dining, but it didn't make a lot of sense to leave the formal living room. And so and the bedrooms were smaller, so, we ended up making 2 bedrooms into one big bedroom and a master suite, and adding a bathroom and a closet. But then the formal living became an office, right? And then it allowed us to open that dining space up into the kitchen with that bar area that kind of, sat in between the two to serve that space well. So it connected the kitchen to the dining space and made a lot of sense, right, from entertaining and things like that. And I've taken some of these formal livings and turned them into kind of a lounge feel, like more of like a wine room, or wine room / music room. I try to think of like hotel lobbies in that sense, right? Is like, how do you make this kind of funny space feel different? Or maybe in some cases you swap it and you make the formal living the dining because it's bigger, and then you actually make the smaller dining space now like a little wine lounge with like four armchairs or something like that, right? Make it more cozy and kind of make it more of a sitting area. So just making little changes like that, and it doesn't really cost a lot. It's just trying to think through, function and flow of the property and how it lays out.
For sure. And that's where staging comes in, because if you can sort of paint that picture for someone and you make it look cool when you're trying to sell it, it's awesome. I mean, you walk through something like that, it's different. You can imagine yourself there with your friends, and it kind of gives your house a little bit of a unique feel. And but if it's blank, good luck. People are going to kind of wonder what your thoughts were there. So for sure, staging in that sense pays off.
Another one is bathrooms, right? So the biggest thing you see in these bathrooms are the vanities are low. So easy way to cheat that versus putting in new vanities is leave the vanity at that 30-inch height that it is, and then get an above mount sink, or a rectangle style, semi-surface sink that'll sit up on top. And if you get one that's like 4 inches tall, now your faucet, especially if you get one with the faucet hole built into it, so now the countertop stays at 30, but you've now raised the sink up and your faucet is now at 36. And you could put a nice big, 24-inch vessel sink there or something. And
that's a cool look.
Yeah, it creates a really cool look, and you didn't spend money on the changing out the vanity, and plumbing stayed the same. You literally just change the countertops in the sink, but instead of doing an undermount sink that keeps it lower, you raise it up. So It's kind of a
Yeah.
cool little trick that I
Yeah,
like to
something
do.
about the 1970s. The average height must have changed because in the 70s they had shower heads that hit me about in my chest, and sinks and that were low, and ovens that you have to bend over for. So, not
I'm
for
glad
me.
you mentioned the shower heads because I think that's almost every job I have at almost every house. I think that's one of the things. I do.
Between the fur down. I'm almost hitting my head on the fur down in the shower.
Yeah,
And then the
I'm
shower
like
head hits me in
6'2",
my
and you're-
chest.
I'm 6'2", you're like 6'3", you know,
Yeah.
6'4". I don't know how tall you are, but you're taller than me.
6'3".
And it's, you know, I mean, you look at these showers and you're like, this is not going to work. So that's an easy thing to do, even if you're not even changing the valves out. If you're changing tile, raise that shower head up, you know. So
yeah, for sure. Raise that shower
little
head.
things
Take
like
the fur
that
down
go-
out. Raise the shower head up. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then we're
Makes it way more. Go ahead.
I was going to say, especially in these midterm rentals, we're taking out hallway bathtubs a lot of times and putting in, you know, showers. You know, putting in a shower pan that can work with where the existing plumbing drain is in a tub, and just swap it out with a acrylic shower pan, and then putting a sliding door in. And you know, my rule of thumb, as long as you have one tub in the house, then I think that works. You know, some people, obviously, there's, you know, I used to say 50-50. It's probably less than that. It's probably about 25% of people want a tub in the master now, and about 75% people just say, give me a shower. But there's still about that 25% out there that really wants that soaking tub. So, you know, it's something to kind of think about, depending on the layout of the master bath and things like that. But, again,
If
those
you have
are just
space,
things
go
that-
ahead, but
Yeah.
and I don't design around it. Yeah. Well, man, good tips. We enjoy. That's the fun part, walking into a house and kind of imagining what it can be and what can I do with that wall. I love doing that, and you get a little bit better at it, and the skill definitely comes in, and you start having a better imagination on where things can go. So, well, that'll do it for today. If someone wanted to get in touch with you, Tavis, if someone wanted to rekindle a real estate relationship that has been dormant since 2012, and they wanted to sell you a house, have you helped them out with a flip somewhere in the Dallas area? How would they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook, you know, or just reach out to us anywhere you see us. I mean, you can Google me and connect that way as well. So, yeah, looking forward to talking to you guys.
Yep, always looking. I am the Dallas Real Estate Guy on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. Ashton Hines. Please reach out if you have any questions about the market. You want to come check out the flip over on Mapleton. I'm going to start advertising. I think we're going to do a little bit of an open house for investors and other brokers and agents that just want to show off the finished product over at Mapleton, and I'm hoping that next weekend we can get that done. So stay tuned for that. But otherwise, just reach out. We'd love to chat with you. And until then, until next Tuesday, which is Real Estate Heavyweights University, I hope you have a great week and a great weekend.